Good morning, good morning, good morning, and happy 4th of July. Happy Independence Day. Hey, I just wanted to come to you this morning just to share a little bit with you, some information, and basically just to talk to you this morning about some things that I feel about Independence Day, and basically bring you in remembrance of what we're dealing with currently in this nation. We're dealing with a surge in COVID-19 infections, and we're dealing with a time where racial unrest and violence is at seemingly on an uptick as well. But I wanted to remind you on this day, this Independence Day, of what one of our nation's greatest orators felt about this day. It's a very, very famous speech given by one of the world's most renowned orators, and he was also an abolitionist by the name of Frederick Douglass. The year was 1852. The year is 1852, and the Ladies Anti-Slavery Society of Rochester, New York, had invited Frederick Douglass to come to speak at this Independence Day celebration. They originally wanted to have the celebration on the 4th of July, but Douglass declined. He refused to speak on that day, on the 4th of July. He agreed instead to speak to them and to address this body on the 5th of July. So on that next day, on July 5th, Frederick Douglass, he came in, and as he was known for, he did not pull any punches. And so what I want to do today is I wanted just to read, it's a very long speech, but I want to read just a few snippets of this speech that really stuck out and that resonated with me, and then I'll give you some of my commentary on how that speech that he gave then, I believe, is applicable to us now. So let's get to reading the speech. Douglass begins by bringing those in attendance. There were some 600 people in attendance for this speech, and he wants to set the foundation because he was after all a preacher. Frederick Douglass was a preacher. He was licensed in the AME Zion Church, who counted among their members Harriet Tubman and Sojourner Truth. So he was somebody's preacher, and he got right to it, building out this case, almost a sermon, if you will. He starts out by reminding them why the nation was even formed. Listen to his words. On the 2nd of July, 1776, the old Continental Congress, to the dismay of the lovers of ease and the worshippers of property, clothed that dreadful idea with the authority of national sanction. They did so in the form of a resolution, and as we seldom hit upon resolutions drawn up in our day whose transparency is all equal to this. It may refresh your minds and help my story if I read it. Then he goes on to read a portion of that resolution. Here it is. Resolved, that these united colonies are, and of right, ought to be free and independent states, that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be dissolved. Then he goes on to say, citizens, your fathers made good that resolution. They succeeded, and to date you reap the fruits of their success. The freedom gained is yours. The freedom gained is yours, and you, therefore, may properly celebrate this anniversary. The 4th of July is the first great fact in your nation's history, the very ring bolt in the chain of your yet undeveloped destiny. Pride and patriotism, not less than gratitude, prompt you to celebrate and to hold it in perpetual remembrance. I have said that the Declaration of Independence is the ring bolt to the chain of your nation's destiny. So indeed I regard it. The principles contained in that instrument are saving principles. Stand by those principles. Be true to them, and be true to them on all occasions, in all places, against all foes, and at whatever cost. it seemed like he felt the need to build a case to let the people know that, hey, I know this nation's history, but I'm going to remind you as well what this nation's history is. Earlier in the document, earlier in this speech, he reminded them, and he drew a parallel to the Declaration of Independence and these colonies fighting for their independence, to the children of Israel in getting their freedom from Egyptian bondage from Pharaoh. So he draws that parallel as only a preacher can do. But now he's letting them know, lest somebody in this audience think that he does not love this country, or lest someone thinks that he does not love the founders of this country. Listen to what he says here. Fellow citizens, I am not wanting in respect for the fathers of this republic. The signers of the Declaration of Independence were brave men. They were great men too, great enough to give fame to a great age. It does not often happen to a nation to raise at one time such a number of truly great men. The point from which I am compelled to view them is not certainly the most favorable, and yet I cannot contemplate their great deeds with less than admiration. They were statesmen, patriots and heroes, and for the good they did and the principles they contended for, I unite with you to honor their memory. They were peace men, but they preferred revolution to peaceful submission to bondage. I'm going to read that again. They were peaceful men, but they preferred revolution to peaceful submission to bondage. They were quiet men, but they did not shrink from agitating against oppression. They showed forbearance, but that they knew its limits. They believed in order, but not in the order of tyranny. With them, nothing was settled that was not right. With them, justice, liberty, and humanity were final, not slavery and oppression. You may well cherish the memory of such men. They were great men in their day and generation. Their solid manhood stands out the more as we contrast it with these degenerate times. Douglass calls everybody who's listening to remember the founders of this nation in their proper context. He reminds them that they did not shrink from revolution because they were not going to submit to bondage. He calls them to remembrance that even though they were quiet men, they did not shrink from agitating against oppression. Hear those words today, all of you who remember this 4th of July, and remember this. Remember it by eating cherry pie and apple pie and fireworks, but you still cannot utter the words Black Lives Matter. Listen to what Frederick Douglass is saying, that these founders of this country, they agitated against oppression. He said that with them, nothing was settled that was not right. Police brutality in this country, subjugating and oppressing an entire people because of the color of their skin, is not right. And for us, it is not settled because it is not right. He said they believed in order, but not the order of tyranny. Hear these words. Hear these words the next time you want to criticize the Black Lives Matter movement. Now he starts to really dig in his spurs. What have I, or those I represent, to do with your national independence? Fellow citizens, pardon me. Allow me to ask, why am I called to speak here today? What have I, or those I represent, to do with your national independence? Are the great principles of political freedom and of natural justice embodied in that Declaration of Independence extended to us? And am I therefore called upon to bring our humble offering to the national altar and to confess the benefits and express devout gratitude for the blessings resulting from your independence to us? But such is not the state of the case. I say it with a sad sense of the disparity between us. I am not included within the pale of this glorious anniversary. Your high independence only reveals the immeasurable distance between us. The blessings in which you this day rejoice are not enjoyed in common. The rich inheritance of justice, liberty, prosperity, and independence bequeathed by your fathers is shared by you, not by me. The sunlight that brought life and healing to you has brought stripes and death to me. The 4th of July is yours, not mine. You may rejoice, I must mourn. To drag a man in fetters into the grand illuminated temple of liberty and call upon him to join you in joyous anthems were inhuman mockery and sacrilegious irony. Do you mean, citizens, to mock me by asking me to speak today? Now understand, now these were anti-slavery people that invited him to speak, but he's calling everybody to task, which we must do here. Because in this time, in this movement, at this critical juncture that our nation finds itself in, we have a lot of people that are aligning themselves and allying with us. Great, great. We love it. But be reminded that when you go home and when you go off to your place of business, that you benefit from something that we do not. And Frederick Douglass is reminding everybody of this task this day. Listen what he says here. Fellow citizens, above your national tumultuous joy, I hear the mournful wail of millions whose chains, heavy and grievous yesterday, are today rendered more intolerable by the jubilee shouts that reached them. If I do forget, if I do not faithfully remember those bleeding children of sorrow this day, may my right hand forget her cunning, and may my tongue cleave to the roof of my mouth. To forget them, to pass lightly over their wrongs, and to chime in with the popular theme would be treason most scandalous and shocking, and would make me a reproach before God and the world. My subject then, fellow citizens, is American slavery. He pulls no punches. He pulls no punches, but it gets better. For the present, it is enough to affirm the equal manhood of the Negro race. It is not astonishing that while we are plowing, planting, and reaping, using all kinds of mechanical tools, erecting houses, constructing bridges, building ships, working in metals of brass, iron, copper, silver, and gold, that while we are reading, writing, and ciphering, acting as clerks, merchants, and secretaries, having among us lawyers, doctors, ministers, poets, authors, editors, orators, and teachers, that while we are engaged in all manner of enterprises common to other men, digging gold in California, capturing the whale in the Pacific, feeding sheep and cattle on the hillside, living, moving, acting, thinking, planning, living in families as husbands, wives, and children, and above all, confessing and worshiping the Christian's God, and looking hopefully for life and immortality beyond the grave, we are called upon to prove that we are men. Would you have me argue that man is entitled to liberty? That he is the rightful owner of his own body? You have already declared it. Must I argue the wrongfulness of slavery? Is that a question for Republicans? Is it to be settled by the rules of logic and argumentation? As a matter beset with great difficulty involving a doubtful application of the principles of justice hard to be understood. There is not a man beneath the canopy of heaven that does not know that slavery is wrong for him. At a time like this, scorching irony, not convincing argument is needed. Oh, had I the ability and could I reach the nation's ear, I would today pour out a fiery stream of biting ridicule, blasting reproach, withering sarcasm, and stern rebuke. For it is not light that is needed, but fire. It is not the gentle shower, but thunder. We need the storm, the whirlwind, and the earthquake. The feeling of the nation must be quickened. The conscience of the nation must be roused. The propriety of the nation must be startled. The hypocrisy of the nation must be exposed, and its crimes against God and man must be proclaimed and denounced. Listen at what he's saying here. When you start to criticize those who are protesting, those who are demonstrating, those who are marching in the streets, when you begin to criticize them, listen to the power and the passion that Frederick Douglass spoke to all these years ago. He spoke these words in 1852. In 1852, now he gets to the center of this speech. What to the American slave is your 4th of July? I answer, a day that reveals to him, more than all other days in the year, the gross injustice and cruelty to which he is the constant victim. To him, your celebration is a sham. Your boasted liberty and unholy license, your national greatness, swelling vanity. Your sounds of rejoicing are empty and heartless. Your denunciation of tyrants, brass-fronted impudence. Your shouts of liberty and equality, hollow mockery. Your prayers and hymns, your sermons and thanksgiving, with all your religious parade and solemnity, are to him mere bombast, fraud, deception, impiety, and hypocrisy. A thin veil to cover up crimes which would disgrace a nation of savages. There is not a nation on the earth guilty of practices more shocking and bloody than are the people of these United States at this very hour. Go where you may, search where you will, roam through all the monarchies and despotisms of the old world, travel through South America, search out every abuse, and when you have found the last, lay your facts by the side and the everyday practices of this nation, and you will say with me that for revolting barbarity and shameless hypocrisy, America reigns without rival. Listen at the words of Frederick Douglass. As we celebrate our independence today as a nation, I say our because I am a citizen of this country. And I have a right, as does anyone who is a citizen of this country. You have a right to criticize this country. James Baldwin said, I love this country, America, more than any nation. And because I love her so much, I reserve the right to criticize her constantly until she fulfills the ideals and the promises for which she was founded. I just wanted to just drop this on somebody today because we need to know, we need to understand our history, and we need to understand that this movement, this moment is not new. This crying for freedom, this yearning to speak to a world who refuses to listen that Black Lives Matter at this moment is not new. It was since the very inception of this nation. When Frederick Douglass gave this great speech, the nation was but 76 years old. 76 years old. Here we are celebrating on this day, this Independence Day, 244 years as a country. 244 years as a country, and we're still struggling to deal with that great original sin of slavery and the legacy that it has bequeathed to those whose skin look like mine. Consider these words as you enjoy yourself today. But this is my time. I just wanted to just get something before you today so that you can ponder on. But until next time, this is Pastor ABE saying, according to your faith, it will be unto you. Be blessed.